This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red podcast courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along, and today we're coming to you in two parts because first up we're down at Liverpool One at the Sky TV retail shop and joined by the Premier League trophy. Alongside me I also have our Liverpool correspondent and chief Liverpool writer Gorst and Ian Doyle. And Gorsty, great to be up close and personal with the Premier League trophy.
It is. It's about a year or so ago since me and Doyle got a close-up look with it when I had red ribbons on. Looked a little bit better that day, I have to say, but yeah, resplendent, isn't it, to be fair? So yeah, let's hope it stays in Liverpool next, May is it? End of the season?
Yeah, I was speaking to the guys who set it up, Doyle, and they were saying during the last year they only got a chance to bring it out once, so it's here in Liverpool for the next 2 days, and as Gorsty said, it would probably be better with the red ribbons on.
Well, it did look better. As I said, we were down at Anfield last year where they were parading it. A few of us managed to go and see it, but I'm fully expectant to have the red and white on it by this time next May.
Yeah, coming up, we're going to sort of talk about the Burnley game and Liverpool fans being back at Anfield, but given we're with the trophy, we best talk about the title race, and of course the Reds got off to the best possible start of the weekend.
They did, yeah, and not only their own 3-0 win, but I think the result on the Sunday was massive, wasn't it? Manchester City losing to Tottenham. I've just got a little bit of a feeling that it's going to be like the 18-19 season where every point drop is going to be huge and you're going to be looking to not only Manchester City's results, but you're going to be looking at Man United's and Chelsea's, and any kind of stumble from any of them is going to be massive, I think, in the title race. I don't think it's going to be one where Liverpool win it by 18 points or Manchester City win it by 13, I think, as they did last year. So yeah, every point's vital. Liverpool kicked it off well, didn't they, on the Saturday evening at Norwich, and yeah, I think Liverpool kind of going under the radar a little bit because of the lack of transfers. They've only brought in Ibrahim Konate, and I think the fact that he was confirmed in May before last season had even finished, in fact, it's gone a little bit under the radar, you know, in the kind of wider scope. Obviously we know about it very well, but generally I think there's an assumption that Liverpool haven't done too much in the market and they're going to be struggling, but I think that'll probably suit Jurgen Klopp and the squad as a whole.
Yeah, I suppose, Doyle, after the last 3 years it's been a two-horse race. Now we're looking at it probably 3 with Chelsea, maybe 4. Don't really want to mention Manchester United, but they will hope to be there.
Oh, it's definitely 4. United have to be up there. Saying, I agree with Ghosty. I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be probably all the way to the wire, but we know there's always one team that can, or maybe 1 or 2 that towards the end they kind of run away with it a little bit. I'd be surprised if all 4 of them are there by the end of the season, but we can't discount, you know, Chelsea are the Champions League winners, City are the title winners, United have spent, 130 million pounds, and then we've got Liverpool, who was only like 18 months ago, they were champions of the world, so I do think it's going to be pretty exciting.
It is. I do find it bemusing, Gorsty, that recency bias about Liverpool. Van Dijk's back now. The defence sort of seems solid and back, sort of the foundations being led there. But nobody, probably other than us, are talking about Liverpool.
Well, that's it. There was 20 BBC pundits last week where none of them tipped Liverpool to win the title, and I think it was Jermaine Beckford tipped them to finish outside the top 4, which is incredible, really. And you think now it's very much a closed shot for me, the top 4. It's not the big 6 anymore, it's back to being the top 4, if you like, and the likes of Leicester and Tottenham probably have a few things to say about that, but I think now it is very much, you know, the 4 powerhouses, and it's just going to be a case of where they land, and Doyley's got a point, we might see 1 or 2 fall away as the season wears on, but I don't think we're going to see one team steamroller as we have done the last couple of seasons, so plenty to be excited for it as a neutral. Obviously we'll have our hand in the Liverpool till, won't we, so we'll be keeping an eye on that, and I do certainly think that they've been a little bit overlooked, strangely. I think there's kind of been this outside perception that you know, they haven't brought anyone in, and it was only Van Dijk who was injured last season. It wasn't, was it? It was Van Dijk, it was Matip, it was Gomez, it was Thiago, Jota, Henderson. They all missed minimum 2-3 months. So if Liverpool can avoid that kind of crippling injury list again this season, then no reason for me why we won't have red ribbons on these in May.
Yeah, hopefully, certainly sort of hope that will be the case. What was it, 8 years ago, 13-14, Doyle, we know how it finished, but that season was...
Why would you bring that up?
No, because that season it was mad in terms of how many changes there were with who was leading it. I feel this season could be quite similar.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, because I think Arsenal were up there as well that season, so I mean, imagine that now, that would never happen. Yeah, I do think it's going to be one where I think the league winners, they're going to, I think possibly 4 or 5 defeats, which is why, as Ghosty said, City losing the first game, although admittedly they had by some distance the most difficult opening game of the 4 teams. I think they can't afford to lose like more than 4 now, because they're probably not going to win it, but you know with City that they can just go on and win 20 games in a row, and that's the kind of standard that Liverpool are going to have to adhere to. And the thing is, they have done for the previous 2 years before last season. And as Gorsty said, I must admit, I know we've got limited time. I thought he was going to go through every single injured player from last season. But they're going to be, hopefully, most of them are going to be okay this season with Konate. And I think Liverpool are going to surprise people, although given that the trophies that they've won in recent years, it seems amazing that we're talking about a team like Liverpool that are going under the radar.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose kind of trying to set point markers is quite difficult, because the last few seasons it's been over 90 or just under last year for Manchester City. Quite frankly, 4 teams aren't going to be able to get 90 points because there won't be enough to share around.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I think the head-to-heads this season are going to be massive. 16 points up for grabs in those fixtures. So yeah, they're going to have a bit more of an impact than they have in previous years, when we've seen Manchester United pretty much seem to draw every single one of those, particularly away, didn't they? Liverpool have had a really good record in those in recent years. Obviously drew with Man City last season, beaten 4-1 at Anfield, but mitigating circumstances with no crowd, and I think that's going to be a big thing as well. The fans being back inside Anfield tomorrow for 54,000. I think when there was no supporters in the ground, it was easier for City to control things, and there was no kind of intangible element of the fans throwing certain players off the games and so on. And Pep Guardiola admitted as much in that 4-1 win in February, was it? He said Anfield, without fans it isn't Anfield, and that was why they were able to kind of regain the composure at 1-1 when Mohamed Salah equalises and 25 minutes to go. Normally if Anfield's full, that is absolutely bouncing, isn't it? Liverpool go on and push for a winner. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be very different to what we've seen last season. Obviously Man City are going to be up there again. We hope that Liverpool are going to be up there, and it's going to be another fascinating season.
The first of those head-to-heads will be next weekend. We'll talk about Burnley in a bit, but Chelsea against Liverpool be a early one to sort of whet the appetite as to who are going to maybe be the title favourites.
Yeah, Tuchel against Klopp, that'll be interesting. I mean, it should have really been the Champions League semi-final last season, but Liverpool lost to a not great Real Madrid. But I do wonder with Chelsea, do they have the consistency to be able to mount a championship challenge? I'm not entirely sure. I think they're the one or the four, funnily enough, that maybe will fall away, maybe a bit too early for them. But if Liverpool can get a win against Chelsea, it puts down a very early marker, because then they've got some quite presentable games after that. And if they've won at Norwich, I know it's a difficult place to go to. We saw what happened with the other two promoted teams, got wins on the opening weekend of the season. It's never easy when you come up against these teams, but Burnley's going to be tough as well.
Yeah, definitely. Right, that's it from us here at the Sky TV shop at Liverpool One. The Premier League trophy here for the next 2 days, the Friday and Saturday. So maybe before heading to Anfield on Saturday for the 12:30 game with Burnley, maybe pop down here and come and have a look at the trophy. Hopefully in May, though, it'll have the red ribbons on. We'll be back with more later on. Well, we're back and we're at Chavasse Park now. We got booted out of the Sky TV shop, but we outstayed our welcome there. But we are going to keep talking about the Reds and Burnley. I make it, Doyle, 532 days when the game plays since Liverpool last had a full stadium at Anfield for a Premier League game. That was against Bournemouth. Burnley to come at the weekend. What are you expecting?
That's good maths, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I'll make a note of that when I write my stuff later on. I'm expecting it to be kind of a party atmosphere. I mean, me and Gorst were at Norwich last Saturday, and it was kind of that there. I know they had the added bonus of being back in the Premier League, but their fans had missed out on almost all of them missed out on the entirety of the Championship season when they came back up last year. So for them it was a party. I think they just loved it, and it was good, certainly for us, to actually be amongst, even though it wasn't with Liverpool fans, it didn't really matter as such. We had fans around us. They were singing the songs. It was just an atmosphere, and you could tell there was excitement, and I'm expecting the same again at Anfield. But you've got to remember, we did do the 2 friendlies recently, and there was 40,000 plus there. And certainly with the second game against Osasuna, I thought the atmosphere was better, partly because it was a night game and the floodlights and all of that, but also it's because you could tell that a lot of those people are the ones who wouldn't normally go to the match, who wouldn't normally have the opportunity, because obviously I think I'm pretty right in saying that Liverpool said you can't buy tickets for both games, it's one or the other, which meant that obviously more fans got to, 80,000 got to go in the end. So they were singing the songs then. You're going to have an extra 10,000 on top of that against Burnley. I think the fans have waited an awful long time for this. I know we'll get onto the game in a bit. I think it'll be quite difficult, and I think this could be one of those games where the fans being there can make a difference and can help the team. Yeah,
I think it's only right, though, that we spend some time talking about the fans, Gorsty, and I suppose we've seen even since the FA Cup final and the atmosphere that the Leicester fans generated at Wembley, that supporters up and down the country, and none more so at Anfield tomorrow, are making up for lost time.
Yeah, definitely. I think normally a 12:30 kick-off would be a little bit of a subdued atmosphere, a bit calm and quiet, and something that away fans wouldn't necessarily think chimes with the reputation of Anfield, but I think tomorrow, you can kick off at 6 o'clock in the morning. Anfield's going to be bouncing tomorrow afternoon. There is a bit of an issue over the ticketing system, isn't it? Liverpool kind of invited us down to Anfield earlier this week to get across some key messages over what they hope to happen tomorrow. Fans have been given staggered entry times depending on what block they're in, and some of them are going to have to show up at 10 o'clock in the morning or 10:30 in the morning, which is a little bit of a departure from what they might have envisioned when they were finally getting called back to Anfield. But Liverpool just asking fans to work with them just for a few weeks while the kinks are ironed out. But I think once the whistle goes and the game kicks off, I think it'll be absolutely flying. And there's something about Burnley at Anfield. I think they were the only team to take points off them in 1920 at Anfield. They obviously beat them last year and ended that 68th 9-game run. They were the first one to kind of put them in that spiral where they lost 6 in a row. So maybe there's a little bit of a feeling of Liverpool own Burnley one tomorrow, with the fans back in, first time in 18 months, as you say. 532, yeah, it's a long time, isn't it, since that Burnley game. So yeah, like Doyle says, I'm expecting an incredible atmosphere tomorrow.
Yeah, it was Burnley who ended the million-year wait for a side to come to Anfield in the league and win a game, and it does kind of feel right, really, that they are the first visitors to Anfield for this season, and a chance immediately to sort of, I suppose, prove what we were saying all through last season, that those results wouldn't have happened had fans been inside.
Well, you might argue that Liverpool haven't lost a home game in front, Premier League game in front of fans since, what was it, April 2017, Crystal Palace? Yeah. How many days is that, Guy?
I have no idea.
But yeah, it is funny how these quirks happen, isn't it? It is Burnley. I mean, I'm just going to be interested to see what the reaction is with fans, not just at Liverpool, but just general, because they're happy to be back. How long is it going to be before they start being critical of certain things? I know we saw a little bit of it already at some other Premier League grounds, but can't see Liverpool being like that. And I know there was an issue at Norwich at the weekend with one chance, and it was very good of Jurgen Klopp and Paul Allen of Cop Outs. They did an interview, didn't they? The club put it out. I think what day is it? It was yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah. And that was a strong message that they quite rightly put out, because that kind of chanting shouldn't be heard anymore. And I think there's in Liverpool, as Jurgen Klopp said, they've got a massive songbook and they've got enough other songs that they can sing about. Just concentrate on their team, and I think that's something that certainly at Anfield that we'll see on Saturday.
Yeah, most definitely. Right, let's talk about some of the players then, and with the fans being back, not just Ibrahima Konate has arrived in the summer, but the likes of Thiago and Diogo Jota, first chance for them in front of a packed house to sort of show what they can get up to. Yeah,
well, if you think of Thiago, he's played at Anfield once before, hasn't he, in the Champions League game, a 0-0 game, and he's had to wait a long time to finally strut his stuff in front of his fans and the teammates who we thought he was signing with, because let's face it, he didn't really get much of a chance to do that last year, did he? I think he'll be chomping at the bit tomorrow, as will Jota if he's in the starting lineup. I think that's probably the key decision for Clarke, whether he goes with Firmino or Jota. Both seem to be hungry and up for it at the moment, so I think that's a welcome headache for him. But yeah, certainly those two players are going to be absolutely desperate, aren't they, to be involved and experience the famous Anfield atmosphere that they know that would have played some part in the decision to make the move in September last year.
And you forget that, because I'd forgotten that about Thiago, certainly, and Jota. You're right, and as Gorsty said, they came to play alongside Van Dijk, and I think Thiago's had, was it about 11 minutes, wasn't it, against Everton? That was about it, that was it, basically, that's it. So it will be interesting to see what happens with that. Yeah,
it will be interesting. Thiago's kind of referenced his song as well, hasn't he, and how it kind of gets him in the mood, and he does enjoy it. But I suppose someone like Diogo Jota, and the amount of goals, the volume he scored so quickly, would have been absolutely sort of praised sort of to above and beyond by the cop for his start at Liverpool, and it will be chance maybe for the fans to get the songbook out, as we were referencing before. Yeah, well, that's going to be one of the key features of tomorrow, isn't it? You never walk alone tomorrow, 54,000. It's going to be a bit of a special moment. I know obviously it's a big day for fans, but people inside the club as well, they haven't had any of this for 18 months. I was speaking to the head of ticketing this week, and he was saying for the Wolves game last year in December, he was close to tears just hearing 2,000 singing Never Walk Alone, and that had only been about 6 or 7 months since they'd been able to have a full house. So I think tomorrow is going to be a big day for so many associated with the club. The people who work there, the players, the coaching staff, and of course the fans. So
yeah, it's going to be a big day, and I'm looking forward to one or two songs that we haven't heard for a while. Obviously not the Chelsea song that we've covered this week, and I think it'll be Never Walk Alone and Thiago, Van Dijk, and all the big hits.
Yeah, I'm sure each one of those players is going to get serenaded at some point. Let's talk about Burnley then. We mentioned before that they came to Anfield last year and won, took points during the title-winning season as well. Even, I think it was at the year before the 4-2 win, they came and they always do what Burnley do, and Liverpool will sort of have to stick to their guns.
Well, the year before that, I'm sure they drew 1-1 as well, or maybe Liverpool. Basically, I know Burnley have only lost one of the last 4 visits and they've scored in the last 5, so they do always offer a threat. We know they're going to play. That's why having someone like Van Dijk back is so important, because he, although to be fair, when Liverpool won at Burnley in May, which seems like forever ago, even though it isn't. Nat Phillips had a very good game, and obviously he's somebody who's probably, there's every chance he might never ever play for Liverpool again if he ends up going before the transfer window closes next week. So, but with Van Dijk, you'd imagine Liverpool have a bit of security at the back, certainly with his head in. But Burnley are Burnley, they'll make it difficult. It's interesting, Sean Dyche mentioned in his press conference yesterday, he says, look, we can't just go there and defend. If you want to play these kind of leading teams away from home, you have to attack. You can't just sit back all the time. And I think that's something that Burnley have always done, apart from when they play Man City away, where they seem to lose about 10-0 every single time.
Yeah, they do seem to. They love an in-swing corner as well. I mentioned that sort of 4-2 win for Liverpool a couple of seasons ago, and Alisson was absolutely crashed into that day. That is part of what they do.
Yeah, well, I think they took the lead that day, didn't they? And it was a time when Liverpool were really pressing for the league alongside Man City, and every point was vital. So Burnley took the lead, a little bit of a surprise, but they always cause problems. I think Liverpool have got a really good record at Turf Moor. It's always kind of put across as this kind of graveyard for aspirations, but Liverpool have got a good record there. But Burnley at Anfield know kind of what to do and how to navigate the way through and get a positive result. So it's not going to be not a foregone conclusion by any means tomorrow, but I just think just the kind of events, just everything coming together, I think it'll be a bit of a perfect storm for Liverpool to fly out the traps, and I think that'll carry them through as well for the next, certainly until after the international break, and obviously that Chelsea game's going to be massive, isn't it? So fans are going to be needed to play the part again, and I just can't wait for it now, to be honest. It's one of those events that I was looking forward to the Crystal Palace game for so long, just because we went through the entire season, me and Doyle, without anyone in there, and it doesn't matter if they're going for the top 4 or not. I'm just looking forward to that game just to get fans back in, and now we're a few months down the line and it's a full house. I just think it's going to be an incredible day.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. Right, before we get on to the team selection, I do want to talk about transfers. Don't want your guys' shoulders to slump. The one I want to kind of talk about and reference, it's not Liverpool-centric. We know everyone wants to see a midfielder, everyone wants to see a forward arrive. But this week, Robert Lewandowski, Klopp's former man at Borussia Dortmund, sort of expressing his desire to maybe move on from Bayern Munich. And it feels as though Liverpool should, if they want to be the best, act like the best and be in and around the conversation, Gorsty?
His birthday tomorrow, he's 33 tomorrow, is he? Bayern Munich talking about 100 million, so those two, facts or whatever you want to call them, probably make it a non-starter. For me, alongside Suarez, I think outside of Messi and Ronaldo, he's been the best player of the last 10 years. Incredible forward. He scored 25 in his first season at Bayern Munich, and then he hasn't scored under 40 since. Which is remarkable. I think he scored 55 last season in all competitions. Unbelievable. He does want a fresh challenge, according to several reports, and I'd love to see him at Anfield. One of the best number 9s, if not the best in the world, so what team wouldn't want him? But I think he's probably more vital to Bayern Munich than what he can offer to anyone else in the long term. So it depends how much he wants to force it. I don't think he'll rock the boat too much, and I think we might just see him remaining at Bayern.
Yeah, public areas, if you can hear the leaf blow, apologies about that. It is what it is. But Doyle mentioned he's worked with Klopp before. He's also worked with Guardiola, and if they can't get a Harry Kane deal done, they may well look at Lewandowski, who I suppose even more than Harry Kane would sort of send shivers down the back of the net.
Well, if Bayern are asking for 110 million, I think it's 110 million euros, is it? Or something like that. I don't think anyone's going to buy him. I mean, his age is against him. I think if he was free, like someone like Messi was, I think everybody would be after him, because he'd be on a fair whack, but I don't think he'd be on massive, like ridiculous wages, because I don't think he's that kind of person. But he'd improve Liverpool. But that Bayern Munich, as Gorsty said, they're not want to let him go, they'll want to keep hold of him. I can also just say that we should do more podcasts outside because it's very nice here.
Yeah, very lovely. Nice. I should have brought the sun cream with me, to be fair. But it is one of those. I suppose it is fantasy, but where Liverpool are at the moment, Gorst, it is just about plugging away, seeing if they can move the likes of Shaqiri and Origi on, and then what business is there to be done?
Yeah, well, we know Shaqiri is a man in demand, isn't he? Lyon, Villarreal, Sevilla, Lazio, Napoli. So he's got them queuing up for him. It's just a case of Liverpool trying to get as much as they can for him. We talking maybe 3 weeks ago, they were looking at between 12 and 15. Lyon's offer was, nowhere near that, was it? It was around about 6-7 million euros. So plenty of work to be done on either side to kind of bridge the gap there. I still think Shaqiri will go. I'm not too sure about Origi now. Doesn't seem to be a lot of interest. Maybe it could be a deadline day move potentially. They come from nowhere, don't they? Sometimes, Southampton, for instance, were ringing up about Nico Williams at the end of January and ended up getting Takumi Minamino. So these things, they're difficult to predict. But as it stands, it doesn't look as though Origi's going to be leaving. Still think Liverpool need someone. They need a midfielder. They need a front man. If they were going to get one of them, I'd rather they got another attacker, another option, because at the moment they've only got 4 to go into 3, so that's going to be a difficult balancing act for all of them to contribute throughout the season. So let's hope an attacker arrives before August 31st.
Yeah, referenced on Monday's podcast, Doyle, that sort of the FIFA ruling and regarding sort of players going to red list countries and coming back and having to quarantine, even the Africa Cup of Nations, or even if an injury were to kind of happen to one of the front 3 or front 4, feels as though Liverpool are a bit like they did last season defensively, maybe willing to take a bit of a gamble and risk and leave themselves a little bit short.
I don't think it's in terms of that, taking a gamble. I think Klopp's been quite keen to point out that he's got a massive squad. I mean, we saw that with the 2 friendlies. They were able to put Origi was on the bench for the second game and he didn't feature in the first one. So that kind of tells you where he is in terms of the standing. But I must admit that I think Origi might go. I think this might be the time where he does go. I think somebody might come in, and I think Liverpool will be, even if it's a loan, I think they'd be quite keen to possibly move him on. But whether that gives them any funds or gives them the leeway to bring in another attack, I think they'd have to get rid of Shaqiri as well. And I also think that one will happen. I can't see either of those two really realistically wanting to stick around. And I think Liverpool probably they'll have a list, won't they, of the forwards that they want. We've already mentioned some of them, but then it's a matter of you're getting very, very close to the deadline.
It's 10 days tomorrow.
And the other team will obviously go, well, hang on, if we're selling somebody, we need to replace them. And there's that whole kind of chain reaction, domino effect. So I think it will be difficult. But if Liverpool did go into the season with the squad that they've got now, with nobody having left and Shaqiri and Origi still there, I wouldn't be too concerned. I think there's enough there. I think they've shown that.
It's not a Man City issue, is it? They fundamentally need a forward. Liverpool have a squad.
I mean, they haven't got any forward. Well, they got Jesus, haven't they? And then they rotate loads of players up in that kind of false number 9 role. So I think with City, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if they don't get Kane, they'll get somebody, and then I don't think it'll be Lewandowski because they won't pay that money. You look who they're going to get in, and could they make a cheeky bid for Everton for Calvert-Lewin or something like that? I don't know. That's one that I'm surprised that nobody's actually come in for him, to be honest.
Yeah,
so
I think
it'll be an interesting one.
Really, yeah.
No. I genuinely think that. Could be something. He scores the goals. So, but I do actually think Kane will end up at Man City, so it's a completely irrelevant point that I've just made.
Just going back to Origi there, you mentioned about him going on loan, and I think if he does go on loan, Liverpool have got to get someone in. There's absolutely no point putting him on loan and not bringing someone in. We've seen before the Klopp is always happy to, kind of let the player get his wishes, and sometimes that's at a detriment to the squad. We've seen Nathaniel Klein left on loan. Liverpool didn't have another right back. Pretty sure that they've left themselves short in other areas before, just to kind of make sure that the player remains happy. But on this one, if they're not getting anyone in and someone comes in for Origi, particularly on loan, then I think they've got to say no. We're keeping the squad as it is. He might not play that much, but he just can't afford to kind of weaken what's already a little bit threadbare in terms of quality in that front 3 or front. Have they got 7 options for 4 positions or 3 positions? And I think beyond those 4 that I mentioned, the front 3 and Jota, it's a little bit of a drop off. Yeah.
Right, that's it for transfers then. Let's get on to the team selector, the real business, and I suppose goalkeeper I can pick Alisson Becker for that one. Doyley, what about the back 4? Looking at the same as what Liverpool fielded against Norwich?
I think it has to be, doesn't it? I think we've seen Joe Gomez missed a bit of training this week, although he's back. But I think he's got a fair bit to go, I think, before he starts starting games. Konate, he's somebody who's just new into the team, and I think they're going to try and ease him in possibly after the international break. And Virgil van Dijk is shown against Norwich that, what was he, at 75%, do you reckon? Something like that. And Joel Matip is the number one centre-back at the moment, purely because he's probably the fittest one out of the whole lot, although he was injured. It was easy to forget that, wasn't it? The game against Norwich, he'd been out for so long. And so you've got Matip, Van Dijk, Trent and Tsimikas. Yeah,
what do you reckon with that, Gorst? Are you going along with the same thing? And I suppose for Van Dijk, it's about sort of getting up to speed ahead of Chelsea.
Yeah, I think so. Be difficult to chop and change your centre-backs for this one, wouldn't it? I think Van Dijk is Van Dijk. You leave him in the team and just get him up to speed. And Matip was fantastic, I thought, against Norwich, actually. He's a top-quality defender. Okay, the question marks always around his availability and his injury history. But, as an actual defender, when he's fit and he's on the pitch, he's one of the best in the Premier League. I've said a few times now, Liverpool have probably got the best quartet of centre-backs in the division, and I see no reason to change it, really. Gomez and Konate will get game time at certain points, but for tomorrow, I'd keep it as it was.
You were really impressed with Tsimikas. Just hope that plug doesn't get pulled for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, he needs to be charged up a little bit longer, doesn't he? Yeah, you just stay plugged in for a little bit longer and he'll be okay.
Yeah, no, brilliant stuff. Right, okay, Gorsty, what about the midfield three? What are you thinking?
Well, it would have been Fabinho, wouldn't it? But obviously with the sad news of his father passing away, you'd expect he probably left out on compassionate grounds, similar to Alisson Becker at the time. And I think Klopp, he'll be saying, let's not pry too much into that one, so fair enough. But it's a bit of a difficult one now, because I thought he was excellent when he came on against Norwich and really kind of shored up that midfield. So I'd imagine Henderson might come back in. Be harsh to drop Naby Keita. I thought he was very good as well last week, and if he's left out, then what's the incentive for him? Because he's had a really good game there, a chance to build and stay in the team, and if he doesn't get it, that's a bit harsh. So I'd leave him in, and then probably go with Thiago as the third man. So Henderson, Keita, Thiago.
Are you going with that, Doyle, or is that a bit of a big ask to throw both of those two in at once?
Well, if
Thiago
had been available, obviously we would have started him, and I would have played possibly Thiago. But now the situation, I think Henderson has to play. Don't think you can play Henderson and Thiago. I think Keita, as Gorsty said, he deserves to stay in the team. And to be honest, I'd probably keep Oxlade-Chamberlain in there. I mean, Milner maybe, but I would side towards Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Yeah, Milner missed training as well yesterday, didn't he? So,
yeah,
interesting. Right, okay. What about the front three then?
Well, Salah and Mane, then it's basically the question is between Jota and Firmino.
Yep.
And I think Firmino starts against Chelsea, so I'm going to start Jota.
Well, that's the dilemma, isn't it, for Klopp? It's Jota or Firmino, and it's probably a good one to have for a change, because they both seem to have started on song. So I'm going to go with Firmino. I think, I agree with Doyle, he will play against Chelsea, but I think getting him in the team against Burnley tomorrow will be key to just continuing the good form that he's been in. 2 goals against Osasuna, a goal against Norwich. So yeah, he's looks like he's up and ready and firing already.
And hopefully Mane gets off the mark. Obviously, we saw what sort of 10,000 fans did from final game of last season against Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I think for him, actually, probably him and Firmino were probably the two who suffered the most from no fans last season. Mane actually went to see a psychologist last season because of how far removed his form was from when he's at his best, and when that's happening, he knows it, and he's thinking quite a lot about it. So I think the fans will basically give him a massive lift. He'll puff his chest out and earn his lungs, and he'll be flying, because I thought that was noticeable against Crystal Palace, actually. Mane in particular, he scored, didn't he? And I think the fans back will probably massively benefit him and Firmino.
Definitely. Right, what about scores then? Doyle, what are you saying?
I think Burnley will score. I think they always score at Anfield, but I think you look at the atmosphere, you look at the fact that players have been waiting so long to play in front of a packed Anfield, as Gorsty said, the likes of Mane kind of getting towards the peak form, having been had a bit of a rest in the summer. So I think 3-1.
Yeah, I think 3-1 as well. Actually, I think Burnley will make it tough in certain areas of the game, certain parts of it. But I just think everything's kind of accumulating for Liverpool, and there's a bit of a snowball effect, and I think that'll lend itself towards them flying off the blocks, and not just for tomorrow. I think for the next few weeks as well, they will really kind of come flying off the traps, and 3-1 I'm going with as well.
No, someone rattling a cage away to our right. Hopefully Liverpool can rattle Burnley's at Anfield.
So
there we
that's
go.
a great segue.
There we go. Yeah, we'll have to see how it does play out. The guy with the leaf blower might also be coming around to just move us on. But that's it for this edition of the Blood Red podcast. From myself, Guy Clarke, Ian Doyle and Paul Gorst. Thanks for joining us. That's all for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.